Horror games. We all have our favorites. Those moments where the tension rises, where you feel the air thicken as something unseen, crawls closer. There's something about being in control of a character, walking them through dark hallways, hearing a noise behind you, and hoping, praying, that whatever it is stays behind you, or worse, turns out to be right in front of you. Actually, I would be very terrified if I found out it's behind me, but it was dramatic and I liked it. Like many of you, I grew up playing Resident Evil, Outlast, Siren, Fatal Frame, titles that, for so many of us, defined horror in gaming. Each one had its own way of building suspense. In Resident Evil, it was the tension of limited resources. Every bullet counts. In Outlast, it was the sheer terror of being haunted with nowhere to hide, that feeling of vulnerability as you're armed with nothing but a camera. Siren trapped you in a twisted, nightmarish village where danger lurked around every corner. And Fatal Frame, well, that was something else, fighting off spirits through the lens of a camera. It turned every encounter into an unnerving, slow, burning nightmare. But then there's Silent Hill, a series that took horror in a new direction, more psychological, less about what you could see and more about what you couldn't. When people talk about Silent Hill, they often bring up Silent Hill 1, Silent Hill 2, with James Sunderland, games filled with darkness, both literally and figuratively, games that made you feel like you were drowning in their worlds. They were disturbing to say the least. But for me, it's Silent Hill 4, The Room. Now, I know what you're thinking. Silent Hill 4, the one without a radio, without a flashlight, the one everyone criticized? Well, let me explain why this game is the ultimate horror experience. I know that Silent Hill is known for specific things, specific elements. Its psychological aspect, the fact that it's story driven, the elements of gameplay, like the flashlight, the radio, the idea of being always in the dark. That's why you always needed a flashlight. And you might think people are right for criticizing it because it took away from those elements. Well, in my opinion, I think that taking off those elements actually was a point of strength. Yes, it lacked a few things, but yet it made me terrified. Now, Silent Hill 4 is not about dark places or extremely dark places. Usually, you find yourself in places with dim lighting and sometimes even well-lit places, but never extremely dark. I guess it's about tastes, because others thought I was a fool when I said that the scariest game for me was the fourth one, The Room. And Silent Hill 2 was actually the least scary. I talked about that in a short video, you can check it in the description box. Now, people thought I was crazy for not choosing Silent Hill 1 or Silent Hill 2 as the scariest, given that they were so dark. I guess I don't fear the dark. I guess people are different, or maybe I'm wrong. But really, The Room made me so scared, and not only scared, but it made me nervous the whole time. Imagine this. You wake up one day, everything seems normal, you're in your apartment, your familiar surroundings, your sanctuary, but then something strange happens. You walk to the door, reach for the handle, and it doesn't budge. Not because it's stuck, but because someone or something has chained it shut from the inside. Who could it be? Why would someone chain it from within? You search for answers, but there are none. No explanations. No way out. You're trapped in your own home. And just when you think it can't get any worse, you find a way out, but not to freedom. Instead, you're pulled into another world, one that's filled with unimaginable horrors. Each time you step through that hole, you're dragged deeper into the twisted realities. It's as if the room itself is conspiring against you, pulling you into its nightmarish clutches. As the game progresses, you begin to wonder, is the room your prison or your last refuge? What awaits on the other side? Is it really any better? Or have you already lost the battle, trapped between the horrors outside and something even darker inside? Henry Towson. To a lot of players, he might seem like a blank slate, a quiet, almost emotionless character who doesn't say much throughout Silent Hill 4. But for me, Henry is much more than that. He's a character I connected with deeply, not because of how he outwardly expresses himself, but because of what he represents beneath the surface. Henry is an introvert, someone who keeps to himself, much like the room he's trapped in. His quiet demeanor, his reluctance to speak, it's not a sign of emptiness, it's a sign of how much he's bottling up inside. He's isolated in more ways than just physically. Henry's apartment is his prison, but so is his own mind. There's a sadness about Henry that isn't obvious at first glance. He's calm, almost passive. You start to notice it in the way he moves, the way he handles every disturbing thing happening around him. Despite all of it, he never lashes out. He doesn't lose control. He's not your typical horror game protagonist. He's not fighting to be a hero. He's simply trying to survive, trying to understand why this is happening to him. And then there's Henry's kindness. Even though he's dealing with horrors he never asks for, he still goes out his way to help others. His concern for Eileen, his attempts to save the people around him, showed that despite everything, he still cares. He's quiet, yes, but he's not indifferent. That makes him, in my eyes, an unsung hero. Some people might call Henry flat, but I think he's just human. He's not larger than life. He's not a super soldier or a man on a mission for revenge. He's just a normal guy, stuck in a situation beyond his control, trying to figure it out, like any of us would. His introversion, his hesitance, it's not a weakness. In fact, it's what makes him relatable to so many of us who don't always know how to express what we're feeling. Henry Towson might not be the loudest or the boldest protagonist, but that's exactly why I see him as one of the strongest. His silence speaks volumes. Actually, I can consider Henry Towson as the main point why this game is the best for me. And you really need to relate to him, or his experience needs to be somehow relating to you so that you can understand him and enjoy the experience of playing as him. There's another thing about Henry Townsend that I love or admire. It's not necessarily a good thing, but Henry Townsend is depressed and it shows. Let's just pull back at the beginning. He discovers that he's trapped inside that room, and he was trapped from the inside, yet he was like accepting. That's the part that fascinates me about him, that he accepts pretty much everything and deals with it and try to find a way out. He wasn't like screaming, he wasn't like surprised, as if evils are understood by him, as if what was happening he somehow can translate and understand. He's an amazing character for me, a well-written character. And him alone, he's enough to make this game my favorite. But there is more. If Henry Townsend isn't enough for you to love this game, and if Henry Townsend is the quiet, reluctant protagonist, then Walter Sullivan is his complete opposite. In Silent Hill 4, The Room, Walter isn't just another monster or mindless villain. He's the very heart of the nightmare. His presence is felt everywhere, even when he's not in the room. Walter's story is tragic and twisted. Abandoned as a child, he grew up in the hellish orphanage run by the cult of Silent Hill. But it wasn't the cult that fully shaped him. It was Room 302. To Walter, that room wasn't just an apartment. It was his mother. Walter's entire existence revolves around that room. He believes that if he can complete his 21 sacraments, a ritual requiring 21 victims, he'll be reunited with his mother that abandoned him. And this is where Walter becomes terrifying, not just because of what he does, but because of why he does it. His belief is absolute. He's not killing out of malice or cruelty. He's doing it out of love. A twisted, delusional love for a place that never truly existed. What makes Walter so disturbing is that he doesn't see himself as evil. In his mind, he's on a righteous path. Each kill brings him one step closer to his goal. But that's where his nightmare seeps into yours. Walter isn't a demon or a creature from the other world. He's human, a human so broken, so consumed by his own twisted belief that he's willing to destroy anyone in his path, including himself. And Walter isn't just a distant antagonist. He's not hiding in some corner waiting for you to find him. He's there with you throughout the game, stalking you, invading your safe space. The moment you think the room is your refuge, Walter reminds you that it's not. You can't escape him because, in many ways, he is in the room. He's inescapable, his presence always looming. Walter Sullivan is more than just the antagonist of Silent Hill 4. He's the embodiment of obsession, loss, and the dark corners of the human mind. His descent into madness is terrifying because it's rooted in something we can understand: the need for belonging, for love, But what makes him a true horror villain is how far he's willing to go for that twisted sense of reunion. Walter Sullivan is not just a monster, he's a cautionary tale about the lengths someone will go when their reality collapses. And when you're trapped in his world, the only question that remains is, will you ever escape? Then there is Eileen Galvin. While Silent Hill 4 throws us into a world filled with cold, dark horrors, Eileen stands out as the symbol of warmth, compassion, and the motherly tenderness that contrasts sharply with the game's nightmarish atmosphere. From the beginning, Eileen's character feels different. She's not hardened by trauma like other characters in the Silent Hill series. Instead, she remains kind and nurturing, even in the face of the horrors that surround her. There is a softness to her, a vulnerability that makes you want to protect her. But it's not weakness, it's strength, a different kind of strength. In many ways, Eileen embodies a motherly presence. She's caring and protective, not just of herself, but of Henry and the others around her. Even when her own life is at risk, she never loses that instinct to help, to nurture. It's that selflessness, that desire to keep others safe, that makes her stand out. In a game filled with brutality and disturbing imagery, Eileen's tenderness feels like a lifeline. She represents hope, compassion, things that are often absent in horror. She's the gentle counterbalance to the madness that surrounds her. Where Walter represents chaos and obsession, Eileen represents care and kindness. In her, we see the femininity that isn't often explored in survival horror. And for those who complain about having to escort her, I feel that they've missed the point. Eileen's journey with Henry isn't just about survival. It's about responsibility, about love, and about how much we're willing to protect someone we care about. In many ways, she's the heart of the game, pulling you through the darkness with her gentle presence. Now, there is a scene where you first meet her in the hospital. She's waking up from the trauma, from the danger she was in, and she starts screaming. And when she realizes that she's with Henry and realizes that he's not going to hurt her, she starts apologizing and saying sorry. I thought that that was the most beautiful moment in the whole game.
Henry? From next door? What are you doing here?
I don't know where to start. There was this strange hole in my room. I saw people getting killed. All these weird other worlds. And I saw you get attacked too.
What are you talking about? I'm supposed to believe that?
But it's true. And there was a kid with you.
I remember now. I was getting ready to go to my friend's party. The boy protected me from the man with the coat. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I guess there's something wrong with me. I just feel so scared. This place. Where is it anyway?
She was apologizing even when she was in deep trauma, hurt both mentally and physically, and even emotionally. She was apologizing even when she didn't have to, and it shows her character, her nice character, something that we all miss in our real lives. I think this is why we play games. We play to live the imaginary, the fantasy, the escapism of reality, brutal reality. Eileen Galvin might not be the protagonist, but her role is no less important. She's the embodiment of feminine strength, not through combat or aggression, but through kindness, compassion, and unwavering support. She's the calm in the storm, the light in the overwhelming darkness. And for me, she's what makes Silent Hill 4 truly unique. There's one figure that reaches out to you, trying to guide you throughout the nightmare. Joseph Schreiber. You never meet him in the flesh, but he's there, a presence in the background, communicating with you in mysterious, fragmented ways. At first, you don't know who he is, a ghost, a trapped soul, or maybe just a remnant of someone who was once human. Or maybe he's the one trapping you. That mysteriousness of the game and of this personality. His voice, though faint, is your only source of direction, trying to help you understand the truth behind the horrors of Room 302. There's a constant vagueness about him, a feeling that he's been through what you're now experiencing, and that he's desperate to warn you before it's too late. Little by little, you piece together his story. Joseph was the previous tenant, an investigative journalist who stumbled upon Walter Sullivan's twisted world. He tried to uncover the truth, but instead, he got trapped in it. The deeper he dug, the more terrifying his reality became. Now, in some form, he's reaching out from beyond, perhaps as a spirit, perhaps as someone, perhaps as something more, and he's trying to help you avoid his fate. Then comes the scene near the end. You're with Eileen, already on edge, and suddenly Joseph Schreiber appears, upside down, descending from the ceiling. His figure is warped, his voice muffled, covered in darkness. It's haunting, disturbing, and you can barely make out what he's saying.
It's him.
Done well to make it this far.
But there's one message that cuts through the void, echoing in your mind. Unalive him, unalive him. You must unalive Walter Sullivan before it's too late. That's the only way out. In that moment, the vagueness disappears. Joseph's traumatized, broken voice fills the room, repeating the same thing over and over again. Unalive him. The urgency is clear, the fear palpable. It's not just a warning anymore, it's a desperate plea from someone who's seen the horrors you're about to face. The final piece of truth falls into place. The only escape is to unalive Walter Sullivan. Joseph Schreiber is more than just a guide. He's a symbol of what happens when you get too close to the darkness. His fate is a constant reminder. You're running out of time. You're running out of time. Now, let's dive into what makes Silent Hill 4 the room. truly terrifying. It's not just the grotesque monsters or the eerie atmosphere, it's the very concept of a safe place slowly turning into a nightmare. At first, room 302 feels like a sanctuary. Your apartment is a place to catch your breath, read memos, restore health, a place where you can temporarily escape the horrors outside. You wake up trapped, but at least this space feels secure. In the first half of the game, there is this sense of exploration. You're trying to understand what's happening, and while the outside world is terrifying, your apartment gives you a moment of peace. You experiment, you investigate, but slowly, then comes the turning point. You start noticing strange, subtle things. At first, it's small. You hear voices. You see blood. Then a ceiling fan falls. You think maybe it's just an accident. But deep down, something feels off. This place isn't safe anymore. And your mind begins to play tricks on you. You wish it won't get worse. But it will. The walls close in. What was once a sanctuary is now a prison. Monsters and ghosts haunt the very place where you felt safe. And suddenly, you realize you're more trapped than ever. The apartment, the place you hoped would save you, it's now trying to hurt you. It's that shift in atmosphere that really gets to you. You had hope. You thought you could get out, but as you keep trying, each time the door opens, you're still trapped inside Walter Sullivan's twisted world. The closer you get to freedom, the darker and bloodier everything becomes. The apartment, your home, turns into something far more sinister. And then comes the discovery of the hidden room, the moment when it all comes together. You've been living in his nightmare, but you weren't alone. Walter Sullivan was there all along. The chains on the door, the inescapable horror, it was all him. You've been running from him, but he's been with you the entire time. That realization hits you like a ton of bricks, and the panic sets in. Now, you just want to escape, but the more you try, the more trapped you feel. The apartment is no longer your ally, it's your enemy. Each failed attempt to leave only plunges you deeper into the nightmare. And then, the game's endings, the creativity, the varying fates of Henry and Eileen, it all culminates in these final moments. Whether you make it out or not, the horror stays with you. The idea that even your most personal safe space can turn into a living nightmare, that's what makes Silent Hill 4 so terrifying. Because in Silent Hill 4, safety is only an illusion, and once that illusion shatters, there's no escape.